Hello, everyone. This is Absolute Zero. I'm Bertrand Leroy.
I'm Rachel Appel.
And today we are talking about life in the matrix. In other terms, do we live in a simulation?
Some people certainly make you think so. But it's actually been some people make you think that they live in a simulation, or certainly not in any sort of reality that we know.
Oh, you mean some people look like they live in a different universe than we do?
Some people do, yes. Yeah. So, but there's actual scientific theories on this out there, right?
On what? On parallel universes or on simulations?
Yeah, the theory of, like, do we live in a simulation?
Would you say scientific? I don't know about that. Is it really scientific?
I don't know.
Because I don't think it is. It might be pre-scientific somehow, in that it's not completely irrational, but it can only, well, yeah, in order to be scientific, it would have to have some evidence behind it and some falsification, falsifiability rather.
Right.
So I don't know. How would you falsify that? Actually, there might be a few ways.
Okay. So we can go to Grand Central Station and check all the lockers and see if people are living in them, like little tiny people. Like at the end of Men in Black, we can falsify that one. But I think we're talking about slightly larger claims here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the main argument that people are giving for living in a simulation is a probabilistic argument.
Okay.
The reasoning goes something like this. A civilization that is sufficiently advanced would have the means to produce a simulation.
Okay.
So that in itself might be actually not true. I mean, we can produce simulations. We have games like No Man's Sky, for example, that simulate a whole galaxy and so on. But to produce a realistic simulation that is rich enough that sentient beings would emerge in that simulation,
yeah,
I think maybe a little too early to call.
Okay.
And we'll get back on that claim. But anyway, let's grant this one for now. So the argument continues by saying that if such a simulation existed, there could be civilizations that would emerge in those simulations that would themselves have the technical means to create their own simulation. And from that comes the idea that there is probably a hierarchy of simulations, and there is a large number of simulations. And then you have to wonder, is the probability becomes higher that you are living in a simulation than that you are living in a parent universe for simulations.
Right. Well, it kind of sounds like simulations all the way down.
Yes. Well, not all the way down. There might be an actual real world, but it's very unlikely that you would be in that one if all those hypotheses are valid. Not necessarily be. But okay, so that's the argument for.
How would we go about detecting whether you're in a simulation at all? How are people approaching this even?
Yes.
Other than sounds wackadoodle.
Any probabilistic argument is going to be very difficult to sustain because we only have one universe to look at. So making probabilities on something we only have one example on is actually tricky business. So it's probably better to ask ourselves how we would tell between a simulated universe and an actual universe. Would there be significant differences? And is it something that we could detect on ours? And Actually, I believe that, yeah, that we can.
Okay.
To a degree. I mean, there are always loopholes and the stuff, but and there is also the fact that you probably shouldn't believe anything that isn't supported by evidence, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, there is lots of things that are in principle possible, but you still shouldn't believe.
Right.
Many more possible but false things than true things. But anyway, so I think one angle that is interesting is the angle of the information content of the universe.
Okay.
Because if you look at a simulation, the simulation will have to live on a substrate, on a material substrate, a computer, in other words. And that computer would need to have a certain size. And there would be limits to the amount of information that it could contain and process. And even a very advanced civilization would probably not be able to build a computer that is larger than a solar system, and even that is far out. And such a computer would be limited in such a way that it couldn't contain a universe that has more information than what the computer itself can contain.
That's a good point.
It would be compressed in lots of ways. If you take the example that I was giving earlier of the No Man's Sky game, that's a game that simulates a whole galaxy, right? But when you look at the actual information content, it's actually procedurally generated. So you have an algorithm that generates all those planets, all those solar systems.
Right.
So the information content is actually very low. You have lots of entities, but those entities they're so compressed. They don't have a lot of information in them.
Well, it all comes out of that algorithm, which only has so much information. So by definition, it has to be limited then.
Right? Yeah, the information is in the algorithm more than in data files or particle positions or stuff like that. Now, if you look at our universe, it's not a very compressed or compressible universe. You do have laws of physics that kind of resemble an algorithm. In that if you have initial conditions, you are able to, in principle at least, compute the evolution of the system. But those initial conditions are actually very, very complex and very rich in information. And because of that, it means that if we were in a simulation, that simulation would have to happen in a world that is a lot more complex and a lot richer in information than our own is. And so we are in a land of speculation that becomes a lot trickier than what we started with.
So is there any possibility then, if we were to build software, I guess we just simply don't have the hardware capacity, if you were to make a Sims style game, that it could actually become a universe with sentient things in it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Like, can that happen? I mean, do we have the computing power to do this? Does it have to be a galaxy full of power? Can it be something we have on Earth? I mean, what if it's just a tiny little universe?
Yeah, so following the example that I took earlier, I don't think that's possible. But you could construct something that is smaller. You could create something that simulates a part of a universe, that simulates a specific aspect. For example, if you're interested in simulating sentient beings, for example, well, that's what artificial intelligence is. Well, at least some branches of artificial intelligence are trying to do. And you don't need to simulate a whole universe for that. We already have a universe where that sentient simulated being could live. So why would you simulate a whole universe? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, so I could be queen of the simulated universe. Other than that, yeah, so why would you?
Yeah, so another argument that I've heard is something like a universe that is centered around one single person, like
a deity, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even that actually doesn't hold scrutiny very much, because you still have that problem of information. And even if you are focused on one very small part of the universe, it so happens that in our universe we can look farther than that. And actually the information content has to be pretty much the same. You still have to have the information contents of a whole universe, even to reliably simulate even what's going on in a small part. So doesn't seem very likely to me, actually. So.
No, but it is a fun thought concept. Simulations, alternate universes, all of those, everything in that kind of category. The stuff where it ends up being a lot of sci-fi around it and whatnot. Very nice thought experiments.
Yes, exactly. You can write awesome science fiction around the idea. Yes. Can you do awesome science around it? Maybe.
Yeah, but sometimes we get ideas from science fiction that lead to some really great science. So there's that, at least.
Yes, yes. The geostationary satellites, for example, were Arthur Clarke's idea.
Right.
So sure, yeah. Star Trek gave us flip phones. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but who brought the Apple plug out?
Yeah.
Almost, I think the engineers there are living in their own universe, but that's a whole different
story. I think nobody would have predicted that one.
Yeah.
And actually, the Millennium Falcon has a headphone jack.
That's true. It does. So you need a headphone jack if you're going to do anything across the universe.
Yeah.
It's standard scientific equipment. So how do people, first of all, are there any notable people working in this field or positing any kind of hypotheses or whatever? Is there anything kind of movement out there making progress on this, or is it all just speculation right now?
It's mostly speculation as far as I can tell. I didn't find anything that was really trying to tackle the problem experimentally, at least. There are some interesting experiments that might be a little related, at least to this idea of information content that I was talking about. When you see scientific work being done on the holographic principle, for example, that kind of work is actually looking at the information contents of the universe. And there is a lot of work around black holes as well that deals with information and where does information go, for example, when it goes through a horizon. So you have interesting work like that might actually have some consequences about the idea of a simulation.
That's interesting. Yeah, a black hole that seems to be a likely place for this kind of information, right? Or the trapping of that information.
Well, black holes also inform you about the limitations of information storage. There is a limit to the density of information that you can have, because if you go dense enough, you're going to obtain a black hole. So. Another question that is interesting about this idea of simulation is what consequences would it have, if any?
Oh.
Does it have moral consequences? Does it have...
Seems like it should have some sort of consequences. It's not just going to... We're not just, say we discover this one day, oh, look, there's a simulation, and there, you know, things would just be normal past then. I think a lot of science would change a lot of the way we think about things if we discovered this all of a sudden.
Yeah, so I think it would mostly be a problem for people who are who don't already adhere to some form of determinism, because if we are in a simulation, it's probably fairly deterministic.
Right.
But is it really? And what would be the goal of a full universe simulation? What would the people operating the simulation be after?
Because at that point, then saying things happen for a reason actually makes a lot of sense, because that simulation and the creator of it would have a reason. Unlike our forces of evolution, which is just random and there is no reason. Right? Is that kind of where we're going with that?
We're getting really close to something like religious ideas.
Oh, yes, yeah, right. So free will comes into play. That pops into my mind. If we found out that we live in a simulation, then does that take away the concept of free will? People have posited that we might not have it even not living in a simulation, you know, so what would it mean? Hairy questions.
But if we were the interesting stuff in that universe, in that simulation, let's assume that it's a simulation and it's operated by people, by transdimensional beings or whatever. Why would we believe that what they are actually studying with that simulation, what they are interested in, is us? That sounds very, very unlikely, because if that was the case, they would have simulated Earth,
right,
or the solar system. But what goes on outside of the solar system is almost completely inconsequential to almost everything in human affairs.
Right.
So,
well, being
they would have simulated something a lot simpler, which is what we were saying earlier. If you are interested in studying if artificial intelligences can reach sentiency, then yeah, you just create a simulation for a brain or something like that, and you put it in. You already have a universe that goes around it. So
right, but being such the self-centered humans we are, look at how easy it is, even for people like us who tend to think scientifically, to put ourselves right there and to wrap everything around it. Like
it's all about us.
Right, it's all about me. Of course, it's all about me. Yeah. Mom said it's all about me. Says the college.
So yeah, we would probably be some emergent side effects of the real point of the simulation, which would be to try what would happen with alternative laws of physics, for example. That would be an interesting thing to do.
And I think people would rather see themselves with free will taken away than knowing that they're a side effect of something else. Like our egos I think our egos would take us in that direction, right? Like you'd rather be seen as that than I was just a side effect. Oh, that's really sounds crappy. So, but it's very well possible. It's actually possible in a non-simulated world, right? That our sentience is a side effect of evolution, right? Or at one point was, and then we kind of were able to run with it, so to speak. So a lot of things are. Yeah.
So another question that emerges with those simulation ideas is, would things operating the simulation have any interaction with what goes on inside the simulation.
Well, being a programmer, then I want to say yes. You put input into the computer, it crunches for you some numbers and does some calculations, and you get some output. That doesn't mean that this computer has to work that way. It doesn't have to have an interface. It doesn't have to do that. It doesn't have to be a Turing complete machine, does it, in that respect?
I don't know.
I guess. I don't think so.
But yeah, we have never seen anything that looks like such
right.
tampering with the universe, or at least not in verifiable ways. So why would we believe that? I don't know. Until it happens. Yep. Well, I think a lot of the people who are seduced by this idea, beyond the fact that it's actually kind of plausible, I think a lot of people actually have some kind of afterlife hope attached to it. That they are not just side effects of the Matrix, but they are. I mean, the idea of the Matrix is different from just a simulated universe with sentient beings emerging inside of it. The idea of the Matrix is that we are,
if you're virtual,
that exist outside the Matrix.
Right. So
right?
you're eternal then, yeah.
Yeah, and if we get unplugged somehow, we are just going to wake up in that super universe.
Yeah. That would be nice.
That would be nice. Of course it would be nice, but do we have any reason to believe it? No.
Nope.
It's once again all about us, us, us.
Right. Damn humans.
Yeah.
But true. Yes.
So a lot of wishful thinking in all that, I think.
Definitely some wishful thinking there. That would be cool to just wake up in another universe like that, though. I like it.
It would be interesting.
Everything is solved. The only thing, though, one thing that might be slightly falsifiable is, you would think if this happens, and we are really these ethereal beings that are eternal like that, kind of like in the Matrix, somebody would have come back. Once you cross over, why would you be stuck? So why wouldn't somebody have come back already and said, like, hey, by the way, there is another side and here's some proof? Especially if we had this kind of technology to put us in such a simulation to begin with.
Yep.
Seems kind of plausible that that would be a built-in feature of said software.
Yeah.
If not, where can I request this feature? Is there an open source project somewhere?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to see that the probabilistic argument that is most often used it's actually full of holes, and
right.
There are much more interesting things to consider, which are what would such a universe, what unique characteristic would such a universe have, and does ours have those characteristics?
Right, and then being a programmer, right, thinking in terms of open source, if this is a simulation that is built on software, can we get or find this code somewhere in our universe so we can tinker with it? Where is it? Like, can we start looking at a location to find this? There has to be a repo somewhere.
So that's interesting. So the laws of physics could be somehow, kind of the program operating everything. And Wolfram, the guy who invented Mathematica, actually has a theory, more like a position to model the laws of physics from automata, where you have small independent agents that interact with each other, and So those are interesting ideas, but not super substantiated from an experimental standpoint. But yeah, it's yeah.
Interesting. What I like about these kind of topics are the questions that they open up. You know, so many more than there are answers, but that's how you make any kind of progress on anything is the questions. And I like the creativity that comes behind some of the questions people have about these things and some of the ideas. And of course, that makes it into sci-fi, which, you know, gives us a lot of entertainment, you know, as well as helping to advance science.
Yep. All right. Anything else?
I don't know. Let me check this locker for a little furry thing. I just like to pretend build my own little universes and be master of them. Anyway, it's a fun little thing. Be the benevolent dictator of my own little universe.
Yeah. And poke inside and throw some thunder and
thunder and lightning.
Yeah. All right.
Okie dokie.
I guess that's it.
Pretty much.
Cool.
So, was this real or was this just a simulation of a podcast? You'll never know.
No. All right. Bye, everyone. This
Until
has
next
been
week.
Until our next episode.
Whenever.
Will it be next week? Who knows? There is no evidence, or it's hard to infer from
We'll be on a
behavior
schedule.
or anything. So who knows? Okay, we'll see you again when we see you again, and bye, everyone.
Bye.